where life ends. It never ends anywhere. It never begins anywhere. We are involved in eternity. We have been here since the very beginning, if there was any beginning. And we will be here. We are going to be here to the very end, if there is going to be any end. In fact, there cannot be any beginning and there cannot be any end. We are life. Forms change. Bodies change. Minds change. And what we call life is just identification with a certain body, with a certain mind, with a certain attitude. What we call death is nothing but getting out of that form, out of that body, out of that concept. You change houses. If you get too much identified with one house, then changing the house will be very painful. You will think you are dying. Because the old house was what you were. That was your identity. But it doesn't happen because you know you are only changing the house, you remain the same. Those who have looked within themselves, those who have found who they are, come to know an eternal, non-ending process. Life is a process, timeless, beyond time. Death is part of it. Death is a continuous revival, a help to life to resurrect again and again, to help the life to get rid of old forms, to get rid of dilapidated buildings, to get rid of old confining structures, so that again you can flow, and again you can become fresh and young, and again you can become virgin. I have heard a man was browsing through an antique shop near Mount Vernon and ran across a rather ancient looking axe. "That's a mighty old axe you have there," he said to the shop owner. "Yes," said the man, "it once belonged to George Washington." "Really?" said the customer. "It certainly stood up well." "Of course," said the antique dealer, "it has had 3 new handles and 2 new heads." But that's how life is. It goes on changing handles and heads. In fact, it seems everything goes on changing, and yet something remains eternally the same. Just watch. You were a child. What has remained of that now? Just a memory. Your body has changed. Your mind has changed. Your identity has changed. What has remained of your childhood? Nothing has remained, just a memory. You cannot even make a distinction whether really it had happened or you had seen a dream, or you had read in a book, or somebody has told about himself, whether the childhood was yours or somebody else. Sometimes have a look into the album of old photographs. Just see this was you, and you will not be able to believe. You have changed so much. In fact, everything has changed. Handles and heads and everything has changed. And still, deep down somewhere, something remains a continuity. A witnessing remains continuous. There is a thread, howsoever invisible. Everything goes on changing. That invisible thread remains the same. That thread is beyond life and death. Life and death are two wings for that which is beyond life and death. That which is beyond goes on using life and death as two wheels of a car, complementary. It lives through life, it lives through death. Death and life are its processes, like inhalation, exhalation. But something in you is transcendental. That art thou, that transcendental. But we are too much identified with the form that creates the ego. That's what we call I. Of course the I has to die many times, and it has to die many times. It is constantly in fear, trembling, shaking, always afraid, protecting, securing. A Sufi mystic knocked at the door of a very rich man. He was a beggar, and he wanted nothing but enough so that he can have his meal. The rich man shouted at him and said, "Nobody knows you here, but I know myself," said the dervish. How sad it would be if the reverse were true. If everybody knew me and I was not aware who I am, how sad it would have been. Yes, you are right, nobody knows me here, but I know myself. These are only the two situations possible. And you are in the sad situation. Everybody may be knowing about you, who you are. You yourself are completely oblivious of your transcendence, of your real nature, of your authentic being. This is the only sadness in life. You can find many excuses, but the real sadness is this, that you don't know who you are. How a person can be happy not knowing who he is, not knowing from where he is coming, not knowing where he is going. And then 1,001 problems arise because of this basic self-ignorance. A bunch of ants came out of the darkness of their underground nests in search of food. It was early in the morning. The ants happened to pass by a plant whose leaves were covered with morning dew. "What are these?" asked one of the ants, pointing to the dewdrops. "Where do they come from?" Some said they come from the earth. Others said they come from the sea. Soon a quarrel broke out. There was a group who adhered to the sea theory and a group who attached themselves to the earth theory. Only one, a wise and intelligent ant, stood alone. He said, "Let us pause a moment and look around for signs, for everything has an attraction towards its source. Or, as it is said, everything returns to its origin. No matter how far in the air you throw a piece of brick, it comes down to the earth. Whatever leans towards the light must originally be of the light. The ants were not totally convinced yet and were about to resume their disputes, but the sun had come up and the dewdrops were leaving the leaves, rising towards the sun and disappearing into the sun. Everything returns to its original source, has to return to its original source. If you understand life, then you understand death also. Life is a forgotten